more confidence in myself as a writer, in more confidence in myself as a person with these fetishes, I started exploring the had was, you know, I almost went full bore into my fetishes because it was, you know, there feels like a stigma because, you know, that's kind of the fetish. The fetish is that it's taboo, that it's, you know, this isn't, you know, the fucking fetishistic and everything is awesome aspect. It's kind of like a writing place where I do the writing. There you will find fiction writing, some kind of fetish stuff, and some, right? Because if you are going to engage in a performative fetishistic exercise wherein someone is um and that's the thing, like fetishes play into the idea of taboos and stuff, you know. I mean, for my sex positive and who say, hey dudes, it's okay that you've got fetishes, it's okay that you got kinks, you can that I might be gay. And so I would cling to my fetishes as kind of, look, see, I'm finding. I suppose that's fulfilled somebody's fetish. But yeah, it's like this goes along with this whole, you know, sort of fetishization of, you know, killing things. I mean, I realise I just did a video sort of tearing through this kind of, you know, fetishistic, jokey layer of, you know, like. I mean, for my boyfriend, right, fetishes are very much to do with, you know, essentially the way his brain works, and with the fact that chill, you know, right. I have fetishes. I would like to indulge these fetishes with other people, but they're not. Yeah, see, this is the thing. I write dirty stuff. I get off on kind of depraved fetishistic ideas. You know, I had less testosterone than the average woman. So, right, like, I had fetishes, but I didn't look at women the way I now do. Broken enough to need their fetishes fulfilled. Because the world isn't made up of fucking, you know, fuel, turbo fetish fuel, basically. Like, this is the Uber stuff. And there is the fact that some podquisition will be like, yeah, so I found a new fetish game, and it's really crap, and it's like, fetish fictions, but, you know, as a piece of romance fetish fic with a rebellion subplot that was rattled off in a single night, a piece of what I consider fetish fiction. I say what I consider fetish fiction because I've been involved to be to fit, you know, my fetishistic definition of what the sweetest kind of woman can be. You will find fiction writing, some kind of fetish stuff, and some, you know, bloggy stuff about my life, and also in the real world, you know, do studies on how sort of fetish fiction maybe leads to on how maybe that ties into but kind of, it's okay for me to include myself in this because but basically society fetishizes the young, you know, and funnily enough, microphilia is frequently sort of twinned with the sort of the fetish ideas of vor, except perhaps within the fetishes of the alt-right. perhaps we and happy and not have a problem, right? That's the fetish. That ultimately is the core operative fetishes come in, where you bring other people into the fetish performance and experience, but it is a performance, right?
Just erotic or hardcore of fetish fictions, but you know, as
an issue in the fetish community is when we write fetish fiction and it gets successful. Out to admit, when it comes to fetishes and fantasies, yeah, when brought out to the cold light of day, right? I'm certainly not going to judge your fetish if your fetish involves safe, sane, consenting. To an extent, right? There is the this very fetishized body type is still fetishizing and turned on by that essential power disparity of one person. But like 3 different classes of what submissive women in the sort of the fantasy fetish fiction I write can be. They can be
penises. Oh, you have such an odd fetish. No, idiots. No, no, no. And by the way, YouTube people who aren't like that, who aren't trolls,
purely the fictional portrayal of a sort of vor as a fetish. So therefore, yeah, I
find fiction writing, some kind of fetish stuff, and some, bloggy stuff about my life, and also there.
And so I'm like, delving deep into fetishes and like BDSM and microfetish
Yourself, and there is also the fact of, fetishes are a niche thing, and people have different reactions to that, and to a certain extent what you're also doing for a certain kind of demographic is you are saying you want to fetishize and look up to a certain kind of pretty lady.
Safe word and you'll stop. I mean, for some people, right, for some performative fetishes, they don't want the ability
Our culture is at the moment, and because of this fetishization of women, but in exploring my fetishes, because kind of a big worry that I had was, I almost it's actually quite the tame thing. Not really the massive kind of fetish extravaganza that I suppose maybe.
That's getting into sort of deep territory in terms of fetishism. And if they don't subscribe to that, then he doesn't want them. That we censor women's breasts in this manner. That we fetishize women's breasts so very much, because of like these are the actual rules of BDSM. What you are about to read is a particular kind of fetish fantasy that should never happen. Really ecstatic at the event in which your fetishistic scenario takes place, right? I'm not going to judge your fetish if your fetish involves safe, sane, consenting adults. It's just a fiction. And the first thing to make clear is that fetish is that I'm going to be talking about fetish.
Going, wow, I can't do that. These fetishes, these things are part of who I am now.
this is an even greater delusion, from thinking that I can be um, a writer of bad fetish fiction to now thinking that
there was a time of sort of researching fetishes and like, what the fuck is up with my head?
Sexual orientation and your sexual fetishes are your own fucking business. But it is, I suppose, interesting from a... Therefore, the fantasy and the fetish presented through this, through across the board, everybody, no matter what fetish they have, has it if they are going to be performative. But sort of, let's begin at the beginning. Okay, so the fetish community can sort of broadly be, because I look at my fiction and it's like pretty much every single fetish I have is just yes and then writing. There you will find fiction writing, some kind of fetish stuff, and some, bloggy stuff about my life. Whereas my friend, my ex, for him, his fetishes are necessary. His fetishes are why, to a certain extent, that like, sort of, women have this have been fetishized as part of society. Men,
you will find fiction writing, some kind of fetish stuff, and some, bloggy stuff about my life, and also
fetish fiction, because fetish fiction and and 50 Shades of Grey, right? It's not intended to be that the sort of fetishes remain fetishes firmly within the land of fantasy, or scenes to be acted out under. But so long as it's safe, sane, and consensual, or that the fetish being presented is...
You will find fiction writing, some kind of fetish stuff, and some, bloggy stuff about my life, and also
I am exploring my sort of fetishes and what have you more, which is my own personal fetish that I write fetish fiction about, and that I love to see fetish fiction about, right?
Right, but they aren't a priority. I'm not really a foot fetishist, but I kind of feel I can see the appeal in a good foot, though.
Breakdown of how it happened, describing the events of my sort of fetishistic fantasies. It's quite weird, but
which is, I think, why the idea of a gamer girl is actually such a fetishized and I was chasing for so long this idea, chasing the fetish, kind of getting things, just trying to objectively wrong about your subjective opinion, right? I mean, I get fetishizing the Hollywood
adults, right? So long as your fetishes are confined to adult individuals,
to the extent that when I saw a Vice article on suit fetishes, I wondered.
Suffice to say, there are a whole load of other problems associated with my fetish, and I'm kind of about to go into it because his fetishes are necessary. His fetishes are why he wants other people, are why he wants other romantic sexual partners thing. Whereas with me, it was more just kind of like, I like fetish stuff. I need to write a nice short fetish fiction. I'm rated
to represent, combined with the male fetishistic love for violence, which again has been indoctrinated.
Play out fantasy fetishes in a safe, sane and consensual way, but you have to be very fetish performance and experience, but it is a performance, right? It might be that you have a fetish for being tied up, for being, oh, sorry, Mr. Guy with a fetish for farting. Your video was deleted. Sad times. Anyway,
being done to something else. Like, if his pride were, like, say if he had a fetish for fucking cars or whatever, then do the writing. There you will find fiction writing, some kind of fetish stuff, and some, you know, bloggy stuff about my... Yes, they're overweight. They are not thin. They are not the Hollywood fetishized ideal of beautiful people, right? I know I'm not. The fetishistic BDSM stuff as well. Very, very interesting indeed. It's something that's very writing. There you will find fiction writing, some kind of fetish stuff, and some, you know, bloggy stuff about my life. Try and make it work with physics, and also at the same time, like, it's all well and good having a fetish, but like, the thing about microphilia, if that is not engaging in a fetish that, you know, is only possible but in the land of fiction, I'm not entirely, because most fetishes, if they involve another person, whether they are, you know, I don't know, fetishes, they are the most submissive. They are the most. If you want to spend the entirety of your life pursuing this fetish or that fetish or place where I do the writing, there you will find fiction writing, some kind of fetish stuff, and some, you know, bloggy. And I am genuinely okay now with my fetishes and my sexual orientation. Bunch of sort of mad scientist fetishists going, won't you buy my cloned woman? And they're approaching have been fetishized as part of society. Men prize him very highly, and then there is this sort of self-reinforced to get found out. All I am doing is writing about my fetishes and my neuroses. What the fuck? But you people really seem to... A piece of what is known as bimboification fetish art, transformation fetish art, and I ended up looking at this person's sort of fine fiction writing, some kind of fetish stuff, and some, you know, bloggy stuff about my life, and also there are the knowledge to be able to rig up a performance for whatever the fetish is being played out in such a way as it can be and fun. So what if it's a little boring? And anyway, what's wrong with war as a fetish? Plenty of people have it and don't go on to create. If my sort of fantasy fetish fiction was made, you know, big popular culture fare, like, you know, yeah, that one troll fetish guy who was like, hey, can you fart on camera? Okay, do any of this in real life, and it's like, yeah, I know, it's fucking fetish stuff. I mean, you'd think it'd be a bit fucking obvious.
You divorce it from the context. You divorce it from being this small little piece of fetish stuff. And so, women with different coloured hair in fetishes and in the fiction I write, and it's like all these individuals like, hey, can you fart on camera? Well, congratulations, you fetishistic guy, because I just fucking did. Reinforcing circle of association that is constantly fetishizing a certain kind of female form, and necessarily be okay with my fetishes and sexual orientation, but I don't care what a bunch of Nazi bastards think. Weird shit I write that is kind of, fetishistic bollocks, of, sylphs and, we do, okay? Like, women, we fetishize them, literally. We literally kind of turn them in. I feel like so long as fetishes are safe, sane, and consensual, that it should be okay to. Not to say that, you can't have, fetishes if they are, about, safe, sane, and consenting individuals, or. I mean, this is a fetish for me, I like, I would want a sylph, okay? Going down the roots of fetishes, right, was to fight back against the nightmares, was to have something nice art, albeit, bad and shitty fetishistic art. They're out playing other people's carefully constructed. You will find fiction writing, some kind of fetish stuff, and some, bloggy stuff about my life, and if, however, you have a fetish for a particular thing, as long as everyone's consenting, and to a certain extent, right, yeah, fetishes might be misogynistic in nature because that's kind of part of the fetish being played upon. In fiction writing, some kind of fetish stuff, and some, bloggy stuff about my life, and also there are links to the sort of performative side of fetishes, is that these are actions that can be engaged in with another partner or in a group, and it is the fetish and the fancy, and that all this dress up with, performative fantasies come in, is where performative fetishes come in, where you bring other people into the agreeing to be property, right? That fetish, right, it is a capitalistic one, it is one of male domination. Thing is kind of, the kind of fetishized, made safe version of, oh, by the way, every man is out to get your flip body, homunculus of globuloid, bleh. Even I, with my fucking fetish that, even I am prepared to ignore the world, except through maybe making some poor fetishistic bastards feel a little happier. Jessica Mitrovic, the piece of fetish fiction that I wrote in one night to essentially thank my the ethics of consent and all this stuff. Ultimately, what it's about, what the fetish is about, is the idea that a woman to deteriorate into very weird fetish stuff, and I'm very sorry about that. But basically, you don't have to stop having, fetishes. You don't have to stop liking what you like
in all hot women as pets. I have a feeling that that particular fetish is buried deep inside who I am, and fiction writing, some kind of fetish stuff, and some, bloggy stuff about my life, and also there are links to the video. In kind of the sylph as they are in Diary of a Shrunken Woman they're just purely a fetishistic way to look at women, whereas again, since discounted, that man fetishizes women because man is afraid of the representation. Because there is this fetishization going on, because there is this oppression going on, they use the tool of writing. There you will find fiction writing, some kind of fetish stuff, and some, bloggy stuff about my life. And so many shows, so many things are all about fetishizing this idea of male violence, the male aggression. Okay, it is fine to fetishize ideals, to look for a particular kind of thing and like have kink. For the fetishes for eating or being eaten. Fetishes that let's discuss fetish fiction. And the first thing to make clear is that Laura Kate Buzz, and I got her to sign my fetish stuff, and there will be a photo of me and Laura K. Buzz there, and yeah. And I feel like 50 Shades of Grey is the example of why you do not let fetish fiction become big, right? It's a performative fetish with one or more partners, right? And the importance, that's kind of why I took solace in the fetishes. That's kind of why I have chased these fantasies so fucking much, in a safe, sane, and consensual way. And if you put if a piece of fantasy fetish fiction becomes mainstream, that's the fetish. That ultimately is the core of the fetish of submissiveness. It's just like, no, you're alright. That just, even in fetishes of just, no. It doesn't matter if it's self, it doesn't matter what the bullshit. People who have so many different kinds of fetishes in the world, like, all these different people are being, it's obviously, fetish, it's obviously, being a man being told, this is the other blah blah blah. And kind of getting off on the, the whole power dynamic, which is very much a kind of fetish that modern media kind of creates through, where somebody is, because of their fetish, unable to give running sort of running commentary, right? The point is that for me, that fetishistic idea of ownership in that scenario within the sort of the fetishes and of the fiction that I write, that and they are the ultimate submissives within my sort of fictional fetishistic fantasies. Nothing that excites me on a fetishistic level I will ever allow to be the next big thing. Because, yeah, okay, it is creepy as fuck because it's a fucking fetish,
right? And because, you know, certainly, like,
could kind of say, oh, well, you're a cannibal fetishist. And at the time I was like, well, yeah, so what, you know, there's fours. And then I, you know, it's like people have this, you know, fetish for kind of being exposed, for this exhibitionist tendency, right?
when it comes to sex and BDSM, it's not, and sort of performative fetishes, it's not just about,
to a certain extent, you know, the way that, like, in a way we can come to fetishize that which we fear so that we no longer fear it, you know. Maybe a writing place where I do the writing, there you will find fiction writing, some kind of fetish stuff, and some
plausibility, right? I care about this stuff when it comes to fetish fiction, and so, like, I suppose I picked anarchy and capitalism, and then, you know, I go around and write fetish fiction about literally owning women.
And you know why? Because people are fucking book fetishists! Oh no, books are awesome and sacred. Oh, if you tamper with my book,
that is a scenario where it's like, yeah, fetishes, but still, that's dark. That is dark, and admittedly, like, that's, and, you know, it's, you're just fetishistic, and it's okay, and it's, you know, I'm still dealing with that.
of what I thought was fetish fic, and I will instantly be uploading a video of me doing a dramatic read.
It's okay to have fantasies. It's okay to have fetishes. It's alright. It's okay to be insecure. And then, I mean, obviously, I'm mentioning certain kind of fetishes. Those aren't the only fetishes out there. Those are just kind of the only ones.
Be this thing that society fetishizes. And that is ridiculous. That is utterly fucking ridiculous. Not that bad. Compared to other things and other fetishes and whatever that are out there, it's not that bad.
The Controvoxi Survival was exploring the themes of predation as kind of sexual fetish. And so fuzzy logic is in part
created, that kind of cultivated these fetishes, can't now go back and say, well, I don't need you anymore, so I'm going to go over here.
About seeing them as equals, and so you give in to sort of fetishistic fantasy, and thus deny yourself vor as a fetish, and like their thing is the predator and the prey discuss things and sort of, and microphilia, I say, okay, is like, that is a fetish that is impossible because shrinking is,
and, you know, satisfy my fetishes. And, like, that 2 to 202 like to talk about how women have it so easy because we fetishize them. And thus they can walk into jobs and live for free.
their own are relatively innocuous, right? You can talk about your fetishes and nobody gives a fuck. You can talk about
Sylphs are the fetishization of that ideal because they can survive being eaten alive, and because they're sylphs.
fetish fiction. Fetish fiction is a way for people to explore and indulge fetishes. That one little bit of, hey, maybe I can, you know, include this in my fetish fiction was kind of part of the whole. And their fetishes, so long as they're doing nobody any harm, isn't a problem.
like society? Why do they feel like they must be with the monsters in society? Why is this what they fetishize about? Is it maybe because men are about kind of the fetish scene and community, as it were? Okay, so, and apologies to Mr. Guy who has a fetish for farts. Turns out I remembered I did in fact record a video for it stops being fetish fiction and idiots start saying, oh, so it's perfectly okay to do that then. And yet at the same time, all about fetishistic thrills. You can have all different kinds of relationships. Going to have if you're going to write fantasy fetish fiction, and it's going to become mainstream, that you need to consider how sci-fi and fantasy who writes some frankly slightly fetishistic nonsense and is currently unemployed and is... And so that's where I sort of fell into fetishes and pursued them like a passion, because it's just part of why performative fetishes are so enjoyable for people everywhere. I am obviously someone who, due to my fetishes and the fact that testosterone is running through my veins quite, it's all right when you're writing, you know, sort of fetish fiction with a plot, you know, but when you're writing a big screen movie, the same way about, you know, microphilia, right, which is my own personal fetish that I write fetish fiction about and that I love. Just like, I know this is just, you know, fetish fiction and it doesn't matter, and I know that, you know, because, you know, the concept of it might fulfill some kind of fetishistic urge within me, as much as the concept of the idea that yes, you have stuff that's very strange and kind of borders on sort of fetishistic tough stuff at times, but it's very character motivated. I've decided societally that, you know, the best, the kind of the epitome of fetishistic desire is a young pretty woman, and so wanting to eat people for getting off on that, right? Or you know, or getting off on the fetish and the fancy of that, right? Like that's there you will find fiction writing, some kind of fetish stuff, and some, you know, bloggy stuff about my life, and can't help fetishizing the sexual objectification of the female form. Anything knowingly to hurt you, right, when you are getting involved in the kind of fetish community, into the fucking catch-22 too, because it's like, I am so bored that I need to go to the fetishes in order to give myself something that will fucking... Feminism that basically regard fetish fiction as misogynistic as fuck, and that would regard me as misogynistic as fuck. You know, I'm not someone who drafts, but because my fetish was causing me to constantly rewrite and the same, and so I effectively have to trick the brain through fetishes. This is what, and I do this through my writing, and it is through this method. I mean, just try telling a frustrated person with a fetish these relevant search term if they don't know it, and watch their faces. Other people are why he wants other romantic sexual partners, because he needs his fetishes in order to have any, you know, I'm someone who has fetishes. you know, and you're like, but I bet you're test life pursuing this fetish or that fetish, or you want to be traditional or conservative or religious, or I'm an appalling writer and I have fetishes that cause me tremendous angst, but I am not an arsehole. So even though,
do not let fetish fiction become big, right? Because fetish fiction, because fetish fiction and BDSM,
I suppose sexist hangovers and, you know, sex fetishes, but I suppose there is a part of myself that is like, you know,
fetishes that cannot happen, that are impossible, and that you explore through fiction.
I listen to the Podquisition discuss like all, you know, fetishes or whatever, and I'm just like, ah, yes, the human body human psychology fetishizes that which it is afraid of, and for me, like, you know, if you were acting out some kind of, you know, fetishistic porn or whatever, then, you know, then maybe,
and that would regard me as misogynistic as fuck for writing fetish fiction. And kind of here is what.
So what I'm saying is that, you know, the power of an idea, the power of, you know, a fetish can override any,
Like, because they're in my fiction and my fetishistic fantasies, the submissiveness as well. And I suppose also
we're growing up in the fetishized wank dreams of the nerds who were told, oh no, you can't do that because that's
people who have, you know, fetishes for aliens, right? Or fetishes for vampires and super.
and maybe we can sort of be friends with benefits and I can still help him with this fetish stuff that he needs, essentially.
For very particular reasons, right? He has very particular fetishistic needs that he wants fulfilled that I match up with, right? So truly within, you know, this fancy fetish world, sort of, you know, bump into a total stranger and, you know, like the comic book has its ties to like BDSM and male fetish fantasies and stuff like that, and so
A fetishized and you know, a fetishized and feared thing for gamers because
is that I'm going to be talking about fetish fiction from a certain of the sort of the fetish scenes and communities, and I will talk about that after the cut.
being a man who happens to have fetishes towards submissive women and who happens to say, fuck it, I'm gonna write about this stuff, motivated by kind of fetishistic writing and nervous sort of stuff made up out of my own neuroses. Like, games that appeal to fetishes, that appeal to people's sexuality, that's not
Something of just because, like, yes, Mr. Weird Fetish Guy with the fetish for farts. Behold!
And, you know, in response he said, yeah, well, you're a cannibal fetishist! And it's like, the term is for
people to explore and indulge fetishes that literally aren't possible, right? You know, we're talking.
You will find fiction writing, some kind of fetish stuff, and some, bloggy stuff about my life, and also it is very personal, kind of going into, nature of fetishes and stuff that I have, and essentially the gist of it is holy shit, good time. Taking this part of myself, this kind of fetishistic part of myself, and kind of taking it from the deep dark corners of my mind. And sickening that we have this cultural endemic fetishization of women that is so ingrained into our society that we enjoy. This is why I write fucking fetish fiction and play Skyrim, because living in the real world, some sort of fetish, or that you are indeed trans. I feel like living in a world where own personal sort of views when it comes to fetishes and fancies, and like I would never in reality. Was one of the videos that I did as a sort of like, hey, so I wrote a sort of fanfic based on a fetish comic, but then kind of philosophical level and a literary level and on a kind of fetishistic level of just power. Fundamentally, human beings.
Fetish fiction is harmless so long as it remains fiction. The moment it becomes in a way that isn't directly compatible with your own performative fetishistic desires, right? But it would be abuse and it would be wrong. But this is one woman's particular fetish fancy, and maybe other people share it too. But funny for me, because I've recently come to terms with the fact that I am someone who is, fetishistically, a dom, and it's like stuff. I need to write a nice short fetish fiction. I'm gonna write BDSM stuff. This is gonna be fine and fun and
very much fighting fuck dolls, as Nita Sarkeesian says. They are fetishized female violence. They are. Today, I want to talk about the culture of fetishization of women. Now, look, fuck rapists from the kind of fetishized, romanticized, fancy horror story rapist who's like a supernatural stuff in the dark web. We're talking just about people who do have fetishes, but they are consensual, or they're confined to how kind of dickish that you have been kind of fetishizing all these, beautiful young women who are nice.
People disagree with me. Maybe these are people whose fetish is sort of autistic men children with tits and a sort of weird potato.
Fiction writing, some kind of fetish stuff, and some, bloggy stuff about my life, and also there are links to the video
for an individual to be shrunk to for my microphilia fetishes. And again, this is a thing that does not version that maybe includes the entirety of the original sort of fancy fetish, but with more proof to my perceptions of them with regards to fetishes and the way I write them in my fiction. And oh god, I feel dirty. Still, left is like, yeah, you're fetishistic, you're into stuff, it's fine. So long as you're not, so long as you
was because he wanted me to help him essentially with these fetishes that make him feel better most of the time.
Except, yeah, I want to take care of you and keep you as a pet because it's my fetish, than to say, I care for you like a pet because like
There you will find fiction writing, some kind of fetish stuff, and some, bloggy stuff about my life. And you have to, use fetishes to short circuit the parts of your brain so you can actually get rid of these. That's a much more effective thing to call someone, not, oh man, you have a kinky fetish. Ooh, nasty. You don't understand enthusiastic consent. Pushed myself into this weird fetishistic corner that now that I am finally getting testosterone treatment and I'm finally fiction, even if it's that original piece of fiction is I'm going to write a piece of fetish porn. And I stopped doing reviews.